Thunder! 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 Thunder!
What are you looking at, nerd? Huh?
Nerds! 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 Get those nerds!
Welcome to the Thunder Nerds. I'm Frederick Weiss, and you are consuming a conversation with the people behind the technology that love what they do and do tech good. And our sponsor, Auth0, is helping us do tech good. Auth0 makes it easy for developers to build a custom, secure, and standard-based unified login by providing authentication and authorization as a service. Try them out now by going to auth0.com. Also, check them out at youtube.com/auth0, twitch.tv/auth0, and avocadolabs.dev for their online meetup events. Thanks again, Auth0. That's auth0.com. Thank you so much, Auth0, for your sponsorship this year. We sincerely appreciate it. And let's go ahead and first welcome our guest host. We have a guest host for this episode, Nick Salcedo. Nick, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, glad to be here.
We're very honored and happy to have you. And I guess without any ados being furthered, let's go ahead and welcome our guest for this episode. We have musician, martial artist, and vice president of product management at Star to Star, a Sangoma company, Ali Rizvi. Ali, welcome to the show.
Hello, everybody.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, this is cool. I like the intro.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
I was a big Thundercats fan, so...
So you appreciate it. You get it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Let me ask you, who was your favorite Thundercat then?
Chitara.
Chitara? Nice. I see what you did there. Yeah. I think mine was Mummer because I always vote for the villain.
I got you.
I think that says a lot about me. Ali, let's
you kind of look like a Bond villain right now. I got to tell you, you could slot right into the new Bond movie.
Why, thank you so much. I take that as a very high compliment. I would love to be a Bond villain one day. I have aspirations for that.
Back hair and the
I do love my dirty martinis.
There you go. The modern Bond villain is also a techie. So,
flattery will get you everywhere, Ali.
I know that.
Love it. So, Ali, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about you first before we jump into your role and exactly what you do. So, first off, let me ask you, how have you been with everything going on with the COVIDs? A lot of people are worried about the Delta and the MU, and there's a Lambda, I guess, coming up. How are you doing, and how's your family and everybody?
Everybody's good. I mean, vaccinated, so really proud to be vaccinated, I guess is the way of putting it. Aside from that, I mean, it's just the over-politicization is like the main sort of point that really kind of hurts, I suppose. On top of the challenge of having a deadly virus, you've got at least deadly virus in a biological sense. We've got a deadly virus in a psychological sense going on at the same time.
Right. Yeah.
And so we've got two deadly viruses to contend with, and they all, like any organic matter or psychological matter, maybe I just invented something, perhaps, they change, they evolve, they find new hosts, and they find new target audiences all day long.
There's definitely certain variants of Loki going around, and each one is different depending on your mental capacity, or to be fair, to where you get your news. But I want to really ask you about, you made a big move, and I'd like to dive into that. And I'm wondering if this move was if the COVID was the catalyst for this big move, politically
Yeah,
and
well,
physically.
partially, yeah. I mean, a big reason for my move was actually more for my daughter. She kind of grew up, and I'm not judging anything here. But she grew up in a small sort of suburban New Jersey town, and as we've seen in our sort of current history and current psychological state of the Americas, that those kind of small towns create echo chambers, and those echo chambers become a rash, so to speak, that doesn't go away necessarily. It takes a lot of time to kind of, and I'm speaking a little bit esoterically, but for me, it was really taking her out of that echo chamber and exposing her to a wider reality that exists outside of the United States, unfortunately, that wider reality. And so I made it kind of a mission for myself to go seek out a country where people live more organically, I think is a way of putting it, and have some old style values about deeper connection, about less judgment, more open, more willing to connect emotionally, not just physically, and sort of in a work situation. And we've certainly found that in Mexico. So I live in a small town called San Miguel de Allende, and it's a old colonial style town, and could be anywhere in Europe. To be honest, we've got a World Heritage Site here. That's a cathedral in the center of town, and there's always parties going on in the center of town. Lots of tequila, which I'm a big fan of.
I also.
and mezcal, of course, and mariachi bands, and people really generally getting along and partying. I've yet to see a fight and break out in the center of town in the Jardín garden. And so and people have disagreements and don't necessarily get into confrontational situations. So that kind of genteel lifestyle, people, and I mean, in America yesteryear, we had that as well. We've just let it degrade. And so for me, it was really that wider exposure. And on top of that, the COVID thing was very interesting because I actually moved here. I actually came and sought out this place in November last year, 2020, in like the deep,
before the election. Oh, right after the election, I guess.
Right after the elections, that's right. Yeah. And it was kind of timed with the elections in case something went wrong.
like an insurrection. Who knew?
Like an insurrection, yeah. So something went wrong. I had a really good plan B already in place, which became plan A.
Yeah.
And I'm very, very happy for it.
I love that.
It's a great adventure.
I think it goes along with a theme of our current working situation now with our quote unquote new normal, if that's still a phrase people use, where you can work anywhere in the world. Yes. And you should, because it's so advantageous for companies, one, to kind of bring down some of that brick and mortar that they're paying for, all that overhead, and two, just to be able to pull talent from anywhere in the world. There are so many amazing individuals out there that might not be coincidentally in your backyard, right? They might not be within a 50-mile radius of you.
Hey, I'm looking for 3 or 4 product managers right now. So anybody comes on and listens to this later on, look me up. So from a talent standpoint, look, I work for a really good company in the sense of their conscientious, their consciousness around talent and that they were so flexible with me to make this move. And what's funny is that, you know, the town that I live in, they've got fiber here, and so my
nice.
internet is my internet actually here is better than my internet in Jersey. So that's interesting.
Well, I could say a lot of things about things being better from Jersey because I'm from Jersey, and yes, you definitely don't want to be in Jersey. Trust me.
I've got so much family there. It's really kind of interesting, and there are people interested in moving here. And you know, I wonder if you know, I'm likely not the only one, and if there's certainly some trends where people are engaging in this kind of, you know, flexible work and flexible lifestyle. I'm sure there are, and hopefully, you know, as an industry, as a employer-employee culture, we, you know, even further evolve, you know, even more globally. And I think, you know, I think those trends are certainly going in that direction. Although at the same time, we have and not to get into politics too much, but we have a global sort of nationalism going on at the same time. And
Yes.
I'm really curious how those two interplay, where certainly I would seek out, you know, I mean, we currently hire people from Russia and from the Ukraine, but at the same time, we have these, you know, political silos being created, and I wonder how that's going to play out for hiring talent across the globe.
What do you think about that, Nick?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think one question I had was like, how is the change in time zone? Did you find any challenges around not being in the same time zone as the rest of your team that you're working with, or you know, just trying to coordinate work across different parts of the country?
Sure, that was kind of part of my analysis, Nick, when I first was looking at different places in the world to live in. My first choice was Sorrento, Italy, right?
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah. The Amalfi Coast was my first choice, but that didn't work out because of time zones. I would have been, you know, working from 2 p.m. till whatever, you know. And so I sought out, and I love that kind of Mediterranean, you know, landscape, that mixture of green and sort of deserty climate. It's just I love that, and so I sought that out in our time zone, and so this city is in the same time zone as Mexico City, which is central. So actually, yeah, central. So 1 hour off from Eastern time. So it actually worked out. And, you know, I'm working with teams in India, teams in Russia, teams in parts of Brazil, California, so many different time zones, Dallas, which is at the same time zone as me. So, you know, after a while, it just becomes like, time zone, what does it really mean?
Right.
And I think it's beginning to mean less. And
that seems to be the trend.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I think that makes sense.
But I will say that it's a lot easier being at least somewhat close. I wouldn't want to be working nights, you know, from an India office. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I've had conversations with people that have been working from like. I had a meeting the other day with a gentleman that was like, "Oh yeah, it's like 1:30 in the morning here." I'm like, "Why do you want to call? Oh my god, I feel horrible."
Yeah. And that's an interesting thing that you mentioned, and I've had that same thing happen to me, where you know, they made a decision to work in that time zone and to kind of take the hit, right? I'm gonna do this. But what's weird is, like, I feel bad about it. Like, oh shit, I'm gonna, you know, sorry, dude. You know, you're not sleeping at a normal time. But you know, so it's kind of an interesting. And one, this is a topic that I kind of wanted to touch on.
Please.
It's kind of near right now for me, just given some of the transformational changes that Sangoma is going through, is the emotional part of work, and we are all under a lot of duress. We are feeling unsafe in the world, not just because of COVID, but because of climate change. The amount of violence in the world has skyrocketed. And the sort of the siloed nationalism, and then the remanifestation of imperialism, all of these things, and feudalism coming back with raging back, and not a monarchy, but certainly a whole lot of oligarchical patterns showing up.
Yeah, we definitely have these two different tribes for the most part within the United States. You could say there's the far right and the far left, and the people in between. But those two tribes are really at each other's throats. Where a lot of times in holidays you can't, you don't go to someone's house just because of that one reason alone. Like, oh, you voted for so and so. Oh, or you're not wearing a mask, or you are wearing a mask. These are very polarizing topics, and a lot of it's people blame each other and say that, oh, this person's stupid, or that person's stupid, or everybody's saying that each other is stupid. But it's really that people get their news from two different main rivers, right? They drink from two different rivers, and they communicate back and forth to each other that say, hey, don't drink out of that river, that water's poison. But really it's there's some in between if we could get back to a place of civility.
Yeah, but I think that what I was kind of getting at is that I don't think that's possible anymore. In the sense that there's a lot of these type of patterns happening in place. And being a product person, I'm like, into patterns. And there's a lot of these what are becoming very deep-rooted patterns, especially the oligarchical pattern is becoming very deep-rooted, whether it's corporate oligarchy or actually political or systemic oligarchy. Anyway, but I was kind of getting back to, I want to get back to the work part of it and the human part of it, where there's so much conflict and so much stress because of all of these things, and we know all about them because we can get them in our social feeds, we get them in our, in YouTube, we get them from the mainstream news networks, or whatever echo chamber of news that we decide to participate in. That stress is actually a beginning, to me, as I can see it in the world, beginning to erode productivity in a creative sense. People certainly go to work and get a paycheck, but when you don't feel safe in the world, our brain has a negativity bias, and when there's so much negativity happening, our brain is preoccupied by that bias, and less of our brain share or mind share is occupied in creative work, unless we can really, I really applaud people, these great masters that show up on YouTube, this guitar genius or whatnot, but they're almost like savants because they live in a bubble, and that's how they're able to kind of continue to operate at that creative space. But if you're in a work environment, so outside of those exceptions, if you're a general employee, I find, like, how is everyone really dealing with this? I think it's an interesting, at least an interesting question for me. How are people being creative within the context of being an employee? Because that's different from me sitting at my house and playing guitar and kind of expressing my creativity. So as a musician, And as you know, someone who's working in technology as a business person or technologist, it's a really interesting curiosity because I can find myself too distracted for my creative juices to easily flow, and that's been my experience. I have to literally silo myself from all the shit that's happening, through the news media and all that jazz. So and I just wonder like how that's really impacting people. And I haven't read any studies on this particular thing, but I'd be curious about that.
Yeah, because it's interesting. It's one of those basic. I'm not sure the term. Maybe it's the pyramid, something such as that of safety. Where you need, shelter, food, water, etc. Right. And if you don't have those things, you're not running at a optimal capacity. You don't have the ability to put out the things that you may need to be to fully be productive.
Yeah, I mean, we're in the U.S. Experiencing what we used to look at the outside world like. Someone in Afghanistan, as an example, in the hinterland of Afghanistan, where there's a lot of military conflict, and they don't have food on their table. They're sick, they're poor, they're starving. They don't have time for any higher level thinking, right? Because they're surviving.
Exactly. Yeah.
And we would always look out, and as Americans, and look out and say, "Oh man, look how sad that is." But to me, what's interesting is while it's not in the same way happening, but it is happening in the U.S. We are.
Well, yeah, there's definitely places where people are starving, quite literally within the United States.
That's right. And how for a country born of the Protestant ethic, right, and the Protestant Manifesto, which is such a part of our work culture, and how we're productive in this country. How is that playing out? It's a degradation of all those values completely. But it's happening by default, right? And that's where I get into product management, where the beauty of, I'm going to segue, the beauty of product management is that products are done by design and not by default. I'm a big believer in that. I hate products that are created by default. I hate is a strong word, I guess, but I think I do hate products that are created by default versus by design. Same. I feel like product management is especially in our kind of world where we've productized the hell out of everything, right? Your Instagram identity is a product. We've created these concept of personal brands, which essentially means you're productizing yourself.
Everyone's a product. Everyone's an influencer, right?
That's right. That's right. And so, but what's interesting is that a lot of the way people end up creating products, even themselves, is by default versus by design. And then they find out, and they discover, well, why am I in so much pain? Well, because it's by default. People are operating from, their fears and their traumas, and or their external environment, and they become expressions of that, versus pulling back and taking the time to really make a decision about what matters to you, and do you have a set of principles. That's one of the things I always teach other product managers, is having a set of principles for your product, a guideline that's unbreakable as much as you can, right? That you will never.
Do you mind it? Because I don't mean to interject, but that certainly brings up something that I did want to talk to you, and I want to get back to that point. But
Sure.
when you're talking about ethics and honesty and responsibility, and to an extent, governance of these products, I would love to talk about something that's very topical of recent, which is the whole thing with Facebook and how
Sure.
they went down. And one of the things that I found very macabre was one part of the algorithm that they discussed was how when you could make people angry, you could get more engagement. So they would try to get people angry about a subject, and then they would be able to hook them in to get more. Obviously, if they get more engagement on their platform, they sell more ads. Whoopie doo, everything's wonderful for them. How does that reflect on a company like Facebook? Kind of I don't want to say taking advantage of humanity to make a dollar, but maybe I am. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, guys like Asimov, great, science fiction writers, Asimov, Heinlein, Scott Carr, they all predicted these type of things, many years ago. So I'm going to kind of take the conversation a little bit higher.
Please.
We call these things social networks, right? But if one of the things I love to do is break down language. If you break down the words, social network, a net is something that you use for two purposes. One, a net helps you quantify an object, quantify the bits and bytes of an object. You can surround it with a net, and you can see every part of the net and kind of say, oh, this is 25 pieces based on the net that but it's really, and the second part is to design to control. By a net, you control things. You throw a net on an animal. It's designed for control. And so it's very easy. I mean, social net. I mean, it's a net around society at the end of the day. And so I don't think anyone should be surprised that a piece of technology that was designed to be a net around society is doing nefarious things. I don't think we should be surprised. I mean, if you go back to the history of Silicon Valley and the early, writings of, the gurus of Silicon Valley, who eventually became very wealthy venture capitalists, because they not only built the technologies, but they, told everybody through various forms of propaganda what people wanted. And there's a great book. We're kind of going deep here. It was a great book called Manufactured Consent by Noam Chomsky. I don't know if either one of you guys have read that book. But it's a great treatise on how to manufacture consent. So you don't have to force someone to do something. You just manufacture their consent to do it. Right? And the social networks were great at that. They manufactured our consent to give up our data, our consent to give up our entire lives, everything about us into a platform that then hired neuroscientists and all kinds of specialists and built monster AIs and to analyze all of this data and then double down on the concept of the net. And in fact, the internet is another net, and it's a military technology, right? So you can also go back into the yesteryears of why does military create technology? It's a basic question. Why do you guys think militaries create technologies?
I would venture a guess that is very obvious, but I'm going to assume it's not. So I'm going to defer to your answer, which is
Okay, which is it's warfare. Right? The
yes,
militaries
yeah,
wage
yeah.
war, and war is about what? Either taking something from someone or
Mhm.
or subjugating them, right?
Yeah, appropriation.
Appropriation. So if going back again to yesteryears, DARPA financing most of the early Silicon Valley products, and DARPA is the defense agency that is involved with acquisition of technologies through funding startups. Uh, it becomes really obvious once you look at the history of it, and so I'm certainly not surprised by Facebook. And um, and the other thing to really look at for me is to even get more basic and get more human. Right? Most of
Mhm.
these most of these technology companies, when I want to invest in them, um, uh, and I do invest in them, I look at the CEO. Right? I really analyze the CEO, and because the CEO in a lot of these companies represents the company, represents the ethics of the company, represents the mindset, the
The culture from the
values.
top.
Yeah, I mean, the culture from the founder, right? Just the word
Yes.
founder, right? When
Mm,
you,
yeah.
again, you dissect that word, we say a founder of a religion, a founder of this, and a founder of that. So this is a mythological, model. And we humans are mythological creatures. No matter how much you try to cut it out, the religion that you were born with has a mythological influence on you and how you see the world. And so we touch a lot of different things, but that's how I see it. So when you see Zuckerberg in action, either in a Senate, hearing or wherever, it's a person that, for whatever reason, no judgment in terms of perhaps their, naturally born psychological challenges potentially, but someone that doesn't have any a true um, doesn't have a broad connection of feeling compassion or empathy, right? It becomes very obvious, the lack of empathy. Not only, and if you have a lack of empathy in general, that's gonna permeate in your
Well,
organization.
let me ask you a question then, because that brings up a very very interesting point. So, as a medical professional, such as a doctor, for example, let's say they have to disconnect themselves every day at a certain extent from what they're doing. They see a lot of different things. There could be multiple scenarios with loss of life through just their, you know, 9 to 10 through the day, right?
Sure.
9 in
Yeah,
the
yeah.
morning through 10 of the night. So, you
Yeah,
know,
my brother's a physician, so definitely know that.
yeah, so you get the idea. So I just want to play devil's advocate and see what you think. So
Sure.
hypothetically, and I'm not defending anybody,
I love
devil's
devil's
ad
advocate. Let's
devil's
play.
advocate. You can see my horns; they're there naturally.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
to play devil's advocate, this gentleman, Mark Zuckerberg, let's approach it from this way. He's developing a product. He's finding these behaviors that, you know, as I cited earlier. Making people angry and aggressive helps um, get engagement to a higher performant rate, which sells more ads. That's my business model. That's what I'm doing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right now, that being said, and also let me uh, append to that, where I also read things about how young people are going to Instagram and they're finding all these things like such as being bulimic and going down those roads where they normally wouldn't have prior to, uh, technology and all these things being so accessible,
Mm-hmm.
content being available, information being available is great, but is it being misused? So to all that being said, let me put this into a question. Mark Zuckerberg is putting out a product. He sees the different things that make his product more performant. And to a certain extent, people are, quote unquote, enjoying them. They're using them. They're getting more engagement. So obviously, these are things that people want. Now, is that a fair statement, or is it more that, no, this guy is obviously a dirtbag? What's
No, but
everybody's
well, I think you can't isolate it into one person, right? We've got a systemic issue, and while I certainly look as a product person, I love to create great products that someone wants to buy, and enjoy. I mean, I'm in the business. In the business and enterprise product business, that's different than commercial products, or consumer products. At the same time, similar sets of patterns apply. But the systemic problem is deeper, right? Look, we've known all this since the beginning of this kind of fast-moving technological advancement.
No surprises.
There's no surprises. No one should be surprised. And on top of that, we've created a cult of capitalism that will constantly subvert any question of that something is morally or ethically incorrect if it's in the name of money and business.
MSG,
right? And so I mean DDT, right? We or messing with genes, and we know that we have no freaking clue what actually is going to happen as a result of that.
Nope.
Right? We have no freaking clue. We pretend to. We even pretend to make decisions based on data, and for the most part, we do a lot of nice data crunching, and then we make just a decision, which is why most businesses fail, right? Because you always know what the right thing is to do, but the question is whether you're going to do it or not. And so this whole Facebook thing is a symptom, right? It's a symptom of, look, if you were, a good example is maybe clothing, right? Look, it's great to make good clothes. And if you love to make clothing, and you make this clothing, and people love your clothing and they buy your clothing. And you made clothes for the sake of the love for making clothes. But if you make clothes for money, then you're not making clothes anymore. That's not what you're doing anymore. You're making money. And if money is the objective, then you're going to cheat on the clothes.
That's right.
Yeah,
it's funny. It makes me think of this quote, which I think is very apropos, from Silicon Valley, which I'm sure everyone here has seen. Nice necklace, by the way. I forget his boss at the time, the CEO. He asks, what's his name? Richard. He asks Richard, "What do you think our product is, Richard?" And Richard, of course, said, "Well, the algorithm. That's the product." And he said, "Wrong, Richard. It's stock."
Yes. And it's even more insidious, right? Because a lot of these startup guys and gals initially had a value-based purpose. There was a sense of rightness about the early days of the Valley and early days of technology. I think and based on works I've read, I believe it was there. But what's insidious is that once you move away from, back to the clothes example, once you move away from making good clothes to making money, and you start cheating on the clothes, you export your labor to a really cheap country where the labor is really cheap, where you can obfuscate the fact that you're using slave labor to make the great stuff that you have and sell it for ridiculous amounts of profit, and hence, really act like a colonial power again through the lens of a corporate entity. If you can do that, if your greed is operating, it begins to operate at that level. Imagine where else this sort of virus of this greed begins to permeate, right? Your value systems, look at all the people that hung out with Epstein.
Oh, Jesus, right? There's a photo of so many high-profile individuals like Bill Clinton, Donald Trump.
Gates.
No surprise there.
Now
Gates.
there's speculation around Gates. His dissolution of his marriage being linked to his relationship with Epstein and whatever the fuck he did over there. We don't know.
Yeah. We don't know, but I think
we have a good idea. We have a good idea.
We have a good idea. There's some effed up stuff going on there, and when I say effed up, I mean fucked up.
Yeah, really fucked up. I mean,
really
the most awful of awfuls, right? The awfuls, right? The most awful of awfuls. But it all comes down to a society that is not willing to hold certain things sacred anymore. Right. I'm going to kind of go into a little bit of metaphysics here. Is that if you lose that sense of sacredness about things, just your value system, if that becomes fungible, because the operating system that the society is beginning to move towards is a complete, opposite of that, and slowly but surely, right, you become more and more influenced, and these technologies have create incredible acceleration of really moving people's psychological and value systems along towards wherever they want to move it. And so it's interesting that we've gone down this rabbit hole, but it goes back to from a product management standpoint. I remember this book that came out called Hooked by Nir Eyal.
Oh yeah, love that book.
I love that book too, but I completely disagreed with him. I said,
interesting. Okay,
I said, this shit is fucked up, dude. You are creating a product out of manufacturing people's consent, and you're selling this book, making millions of dollars on this book that is teaching people how to fool people at the end of the day, in my eyes. At least for me, that's my opinion.
No, that's a fair statement. I think that's fair.
Right? I'm creating a product that is going to hook you. And look, the word hook has been around for a long time. I mean, musicians use that as well. You create a riff, you create a hook. It's a riff. It's a verse. And song learns is a hook.
4/4.
Yeah, great time. I'm a big fan of 7/8. It was Rush's main, it's a big Rush fan. They played everything in 7/8. But I disagreed with the fact that that he made a textbook really at the end of the day about how to create more products like Instagram. There's this book that I read that was reviled by especially all the VCs, called "The Internet is Not the Answer," it had a bit of influence on me at that time. I didn't agree with everything with this I forget the author's name, but I did agree with him that we know that if we go headlong down this path, and if you've seen The Matrix, you guys seen The Matrix, right? There's
Yep.
that part in The Matrix where Trinity opens up the door of the car, and she points out and she says, you know where that's going to lead. And I think we always know where things lead. But whether you call it human nature or whatever you call it, just the movement of the cosmos, maybe. That we go down this path knowing. I mean, we know, and that's where I really disagreed with him, because he productized faking people out and convincing them to do things that maybe they really didn't want to do. And as a technologist, it's kind of is an anathema the right word in essence, because
Sure.
I want to, but I believe in the value of creating a great product that people want to use, and sure, we got to make money off of it. Absolutely, we need to make money. We need to make money to survive. We need to make money for our shareholders. But if your point becomes to make money and not about providing value to your customers through a great product, then you've got problems.
Yeah, well, if you have to use these anti-patterns to get people to do the things that you want them to do, is that there comes a question up from that. Is your product questionable? Is your product actually a good product, or is it just something that somebody a few levels above you said, "Oh, that's great, MVP, ship it," burr, burr, burr. And you have to do whatever you can to provide your users some dopamine hits in order to make sure that you're around next quarter.
Well, that's it, right? I mean, you said something really interesting here. You said dopamine hits. It's obvious that Facebook can afford the scientific research that they need to understand how to control people, to get them to do what they want,
right?
Or to provide a technology that allows others to control people, to get them to do what they want. My daughter actually just wrote an article on media bias for her class, and she's she's of this generation. She's 16, and she, it was an interesting learning experience for her, because she got to actually pull the veil off of all of these, apps she regularly uses, Snap and Instagram and
WhatsApp.
A lot of WhatsApp here, because Mexico is a big WhatsApp country. In fact, what's really interesting in Mexico, Facebook has an agreement with Mexico. So when you buy a mobile plan here, all the WhatsApp, all the apps, Facebook's apps, Messenger, WhatsApp, they don't count against your data.
I've actually had a lot of conversations with many people all over the globe, and WhatsApp, that's the way they have these conversations with their family all around the world. They leverage it in the exact same way without having to use their data. WhatsApp is great for that.
Yeah. Great technology, and look, I think that's an incredibly valuable technology. But do I find the echo chamber of these Facebook forums valuable? A lot less so. They've made a lot of trouble. Going back to the Facebook, outing of them by the what's her name? I forget her name. It's
the whistleblower.
The whistleblower, right.
Yeah. I don't recall her name off the top of my head. I would have to look it up, but that's quite all right. From the whistleblower. Please continue.
We know who that is. I mean, it's gotten to the lack of trust is the other thing. The lack of trust now amongst the people of the world. The the lack of trust in institutions, the lack of trust in, I think, basic humanity, is really interesting, because right now the way I feel is I don't know if she's a whistleblower. And
Meaning?
Meaning that I'm wondering if she's just simply part of the Great Destruction.
Ah, yes. If that was an intentional whistleblower, if you will, like it was more of a ruse to cover something up, because we all know, the following day there was some kind of hullabaloo, which took the platform down for hours and hours and hours. The building was locked. What kind of cover up did they do? And so, was that all part of some kind of I don't want to go all conspiracy theory lizard people on everybody, but maybe it was some part of a planned kind of thing done by the the people in
powers
power.
that be of Facebook.
Yeah,
the nefarious evil cadre. And
yes, I was trying to not say like the robot people from Venus, but yes, you get my point.
But think about it. Controlling the narrative is part of manufactured consent. It's controlling the narrative.
I think early yesterday, I mean, right away on Twitter when Facebook was down for maybe an hour, I think those conspiracy theories started that, there's this big Senate hearing that's coming up with a whistleblower, so Facebook's just trying to control the narrative. There was those ideas kind of being floated out there almost immediately that I saw. So it's interesting that you bring that up too, because I think it's just very common that we're, as a society, so skeptical these days that, we're so quick to think, this is something nefarious going on. It's not, it's not just black and white. There's definitely like nuance in there. And, we're trying to find like, what's the real answer? And we may never know, that's kind of what it comes down to, right? Like we may never know. Like it could have been just like a major outage incident that was completely unrelated to the news, or it could have been
coincidence.
I mean,
and it almost doesn't matter anymore.
It doesn't, right? It's just noise.
It's actually deeper, right? I would say it's deeper than noise, because it reflects on the systemic problem of a breakdown in common value systems. We used to all believe that there was a thing called a fact.
Yeah. And now we have fake news.
And now fact is debatable.
Factoids. Yeah. Facts are debatable. Factoids. People still believe that. There's a lot of people that believe the earth is flat. Like legitimately believe that the earth is stood upon 4 elephants that stand on a turtle.
And then you can walk up to the edge. You can walk up the edge, and there's like a crystal at the edge that you can go and touch.
Now, again, though, this goes back to my previous point. I don't think, and I think I might be being generous, but I don't believe that these people are stupid. I think, again, it goes back to there's people that get their news from over here and people that get their news from over there. I bet if you measure their IQs, there's probably a lot of equal intelligent and less intelligent individuals. But it all comes to where certain people get their news and whom is in charge and possibly controlling either in a negative, positive, or neutral sense.
I would take it further. I think that I think we in the U.S. Got really lazy in the sense that we believed that we had evolved as humans further than we actually have. And evolution is a very long-winded, pattern. For a fruit fly to grow, little spiny things on its legs, it takes a million years, or whatever, very long time. And humans have been around in the great evolutionary chain, and just not only just in organic matter. Forget about just geological matter for a very short period of time. But I kind of moving to a couple other topics. But I think we got really lazy because we thought we were more, and technology kind of fooled us, right, into thinking
Yes.
that we. It did. Look, we created these amazing things.
Look at this iPhone. Oh my God, it could make me a cheese pizza. But yes,
Yeah.
we're just people, and these things might not be as great as we imagine them to be. We're not even a type 1 civilization.
No, I mean, I love the work of what's his name? The
Gilbert
English.
Godfrey?
No, yeah.
John Candy.
I love his work too. No, there's a guy who was actually tossed out of a TED conference, and they banned his. They banned his TED talk. Don't remember his name, but he did this interesting. He found this interesting. This is going to sound wacky, but in this day and age where where the stuff that was supposed to be believable is less believable, I tend towards thinking that the stuff that was less believable maybe is more believable. The stuff that we through propaganda and the right set of marketing messages always push aside, which is that it could very well be that there were much more advanced societies before this society.
Absolutely.
And we don't know for sure, but we have some good idea. And there's some really good studies and scientific research on this. But the reason why we wouldn't explore that or wouldn't allow that to come within our psychological frame is because it would begin to diminish our ego, and that's
challenge
something
the powers that be.
That's just something that we can't allow. And so in our country, in the U.S., we simply cannot allow ourselves to be wrong. That's something that's pretty prevalent. Mm-hmm. And to the point that we've even removed any form of competition, real competition in our schools, and forget about the education system. Oh my God, we could go off on that big time as well, right?
That's another hour.
That's another hour. But what I was getting at is that we got really lazy, and also we lost our ability to self-reflect and really take a stoic approach of self-criticism. And having lost that, we just let this thing go, just fly on its own, man. This thing is carrying us. The technological part is just a symptom of the greater, movement of, I guess, because we don't curb it, the cult of narcissism, I guess, is the best way I could put it.
Absolutely, because we're projecting our own egos out there. A lot of it is, look at me. How many followers do I have? Did everybody like my photo of the dog? If they didn't, man, I'm having a bad day. Oh, I got 3 more likes. Boy, that made my afternoon. Is that real emotional currency? And how healthy are those patterns on a day-to-day for a grown human being? And how devastating could those be for a child using this technology? It's some of it's just it's really out there. But let me communicate here that we're right at the end of the show, and I probably talk.
We went in a lot of different directions. Didn't talk about products so much, but
no, but we did talk about the ethics of products, and I think that's a really important conversation to have. So I'm deeply appreciative of both of you for for sharing your time and talking about this today. But I have two last questions for you, Ollie, that I like to always ask my guests. First off, obviously, where can people find out more about you?
Yeah, so I mean, I've got a LinkedIn presence. Certainly, I have a very, at this point, little used Twitter presence. But
You know,
the other
products.
LinkedIn, I know products and products built in an ethical way, with the intent of solving real problems for customers, for users. And then, certainly, hopefully, the money is just simply a byproduct of really helping and providing a great service. So that's kind of the way I look at it. The other thing is that, the LinkedIn presence there, but I am slowly beginning to actually work on a book, product management book, kind of centered around this particular topic that we went deep and spent a lot of I've had a lot of experience and spent a lot of time studying metaphysics and a lot of esoteric literature, and I have this idea of combining metaphysics with product, and mainly about this notion of coming back to ethical patterns that that would really love for the world to begin to embrace again, and feel like there is a thing that we all share, and it's called truth, and it may be different for all of us, but we all share it, and we can certainly learn from each other and appreciate each other's version of what is truth. And at the heart of it, it's all one. And I feel like, as a product person, I put that same sort of heart and soul into the way I build products.
I love that. Well, the last question I have for you, Ollie, is we always provide our guests a opportunity to say a few words of wisdom at the end. So the stage is yours. Any words of wisdom for our audience? Departing words of wisdom.
Get in a headspace of non-judgment. Recognize that at the heart of all of us is a certain truth about our humanity, and expose yourself to literature and content and literature and thinking and philosophy that is outside of your echo chamber. Do it in a way that you can actually allow yourself to learn from it, and in that, expand your horizons and begin to have a level of compassion and empathy for the person next to you that you may think that it looks different, talks different, thinks different, but at the heart of it all, we share a common humanity, and let's focus on that.
Love it. Thank you so much, Ollie. Well said.
You're welcome.
Yeah, really appreciate it. Well, that's it for our show. I want to thank first our guest co-host, Nick Solicito. Nick, thank you so much for joining.
Thanks, Nick.
Yeah, good to hear. Thank you.
And Ollie, thank you so much for sharing your time with us. And that
Most
was
welcome.
a amazing talk. And we might not have got to our plethora of talking points, which I really do not care about, because that was a great discussion, and I'm really glad that we had it. Me as well.
Thank you, Frederick. I appreciate you getting me on board, and thank you both for being here and for sharing this great conversation and connection.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all. And thanks everybody for watching. Really appreciate it. And we'll catch you next time. Thanks everybody.
Take care, everybody.
See ya.